There's no doubt that the way that people are interacting with search and finding things online is definitely changing. With the rise of ChatGPT, and also we're seeing the way that Google is changing with AI overviews and AI mode, things are changing, and this also means that the ways that we use Google Ads right now and in the future will change drastically. For such a long time, Google Ads was purely a search-based advertising platform. In fact, that's why it was called Google AdWords. But those days are now long gone. And there is a really fast shift happening where for success in Google Ads, you can't just purely be focused on clicks and conversions. Now, conversions will always be the main name of the game, but there are some really fast changing trends which are coming in line that, yes, we are seeing an increase in the number of Google searches even over the past 12 months, but a key difference here is that we're actually seeing the number of clicks rapidly decreasing, with WordStream reporting that WordStream have seen some industries seeing up to a 44% decline in clicks. And that's why I invited Craig Graham on so that we can take a deep dive into how businesses and marketers need to look at the new numbers and how YouTube campaigns and also campaigns like Demand Gen interact and really drive performance when they're done in the right way. So sit back and relax and enjoy this interview with Craig Graham.
All right, well, welcome everyone back. It's an absolute pleasure to have Craig here. The reason I got Craig on is I want to talk about YouTube and really want to talk about especially probably the real way that the differences to look at YouTube, because it's different to other types of Google Ads campaigns. And the first thing I want to talk about is why a click-focused mindset is potentially wrong for YouTube ads. And then what in light of that, what KPIs do you look at or what metrics do you look at to measure the performance of YouTube ads?
Yeah, it's a great question and something that comes up all the time. And especially if you've been using Google Ads for a long time, you're going to be probably used to search, at least probably shopping as well. And those are very like click-based environments. Those are environments where the click is one of the primary measurements and you're able to gather intent from the click.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about YouTube, it's visual and people are watching. They're sitting there or they're on their phone and they're like the engagement is based on how long they're watching it for and how many of your videos they're watching over time and things like that. So it's very, very different from a click, where a click is actually something, it's an action that you take that's measurable within a digital environment. And a view is still measurable, but it's much more difficult to measure, relatively speaking. Yeah.
So in light of, this is one thing I know of too, just obviously with the YouTube channel. Like I literally just got off a phone call from a new client that we just signed up to, and he goes, "Oh, I've been watching your stuff for like, I think it was 18 months. And this is literally the first time he'd ever engaged with us. So it's there is that non-quantifiable part of it. But for you, when you're, especially when you're managing YouTube campaigns or video campaigns, what are the kind of metrics that you do report to a business to really show its impact and show its value in a total campaign?
Great question. So it can really depend on what the goals of the campaign is, but for the most part, you are looking at more of the view type metrics. So views and impressions being, some of the higher level indicators. You're looking at view through rate, which is, similar to click through rate if you were thinking of a click-based environment, and that generally kind of is an indicator of how engaged somebody is within the video. You're looking at your costs as well, like cost per CPM, cost per 1,000 impressions, and you're looking at your cost per view, which is pretty much anybody who's watching for, I believe it's 30 seconds or more. If your video is less than 30 seconds, then it's like if they engaged with it or if they watched the total duration of the video. And so those are some of like the primary higher level metrics that you'd be most concerned about, particularly if you're measuring in platform. Another one of them is, and I can't remember the exact name of the column that you'd add, but it's like to what percentage of the video how many people watched. It's like 25%, 50, 75. These are all like just great indicators of how engaged the users are in the creative that you're putting out, and how closely you are impacting the audience that you're buying ads for.
Let's talk about watch time percentage. Are there
Yeah.
any, I guess, benchmarks that you look to achieve to go, hey, look, yep, that was a great ad, or that wasn't a great ad? Like, in terms of in the 24, like to the full watch ad. Let's just take, people who watch the full-time ad. Yeah. Is there any sort of core metrics that your benchmarks that you go, look, this is what we want to achieve for an ad?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be great to have anything over like 50 to 75%. And it's all relative too, because like every case is going to be different. Every client business goals, they're always going to be different. And we've worked with so many different goals and business models that operate under different circumstances. And you're always going to want to try to draw data from somewhere, wherever you have it, if you have it. But if you don't, then starting at some kind of a benchmark, like let's at least get to a 50%. Let's say video view to 50%. And to be able to do that, you want to be able to have a few different creatives that you're running, of course, to be able to measure against and potentially some different audiences as well.
Do you have any, so, I mean, obviously too, there's a lot of different variables we're talking about here. So let's just say for this, we're talking probably let's talk about in-stream. So the ads that interrupt people from there. Are there, like, is there any, so if you were to start some in-stream ads for people watching, these are the ads that potentially interrupting this YouTube video right now. Are there any sort of ads, like benchmarks you look at for a new business coming in? This is their first video ad. Like, should they be looking at a 30-second ad? Should they be looking at sort of a 45-second ad? Do you play around with the durations of the ads?
Hey, we're going to get you right back to the interview with Craig really, really soon. But I did quickly want to let you know that this interview was brought to you by Define Digital Academy's newest program, which is called On Demand. I've built On Demand for one reason, and that's to help business owners scale with Google Ads. If you are starting to see some success with Google Ads, so you can get some conversions, but you just can't break through to the next levels of success, that is where you need to come in and get started with On Demand. On Demand is our Done With You management program. So not only me, but my highly experienced industry-leading coaches come alongside with you and really walk you through the process so that you can take your business to the next level with Google Ads. On Demand is already seeing amazing success for businesses that are part of the program, and it not only includes a full initial strategy pathway, but it also includes live one-on-one coaching calls and also a very own private Slack channel. If you want to find out more about On Demand and how it can help you and your business, why don't you follow that link in the description below so that you can apply, and I'll get right back in touch with you. But right now, let's jump back into the interview.
Yeah, really good question. So I would probably start on the around 30-second mark as like your benchmark to get started. And probably, there's like ideal, and then there's, I don't know, what your budget potentially is as well.
Yeah.
And so it would be really ideal if you have at least 3 different angles that you're focusing on that are at least 30 seconds in duration. And each of those, perhaps you're A/B testing 2 different hooks on each one as well. So it's like you have at least, 3 to 5, let's say, net new different angle creatives. And then each of those iterations of like hooks that are really trying to bring people in and hold them there as well. If that makes sense. Yeah.
So you just, and correct me if I'm wrong here from what you're saying there, you're probably saying if you had 3 or 4, I guess, core concepts, but then within those 3 or 4 core concepts, you're potentially also testing another 2 or 3 hooks or angles within those core concepts.
Yeah, well said. Exactly. Yeah.
And then do you literally release them all at the same time? How are you structuring those when you release and start your YouTube campaign?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things to think about too is that there's obviously so many different ways that you can cut this pie, but like typically YouTube campaigns, just like any other Google Ads campaign, they generate a lot of the learning data at the campaign level. So if you can have a single campaign and you're operating on whatever your budget might be, it's a limited budget, you probably want to try and get started within a single campaign.
Okay.
And if you perhaps have different creatives set up at the ad group level, so then you're testing like at least, a couple of creatives, a couple iterations of those creatives with each of your core concepts representing an ad group, then you're able to generate lots of data and feedback within the campaign itself.
Yeah.
So that would probably be one of the better ways to approach it, and focusing on in-stream to get started tends to be the best place to go. And then of course there's always the ability, whether you wanted to start with it or move into it further once you have a little bit more data feedback, is testing sequencing campaigns as well. And that allows Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because that's you reading my mind. That's the exact next thing I was going to talk about.
Yes.
Is so let's stick with YouTube campaigns. Like, how are you structuring your sequencing, and maybe just to sort of explain to people as well what the feature and what the role of sequencing is.
For sure. So sequencing is the ability to serve videos to the same user in whatever sequence that you have set.
Yeah.
And so it allows you to continuously engage with the same users within the same audiences in the sequence that you believe, whether it's based on your data or, based on what you're trying to test, is going to be most effective in driving whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And how are you setting those up or structuring those? Well, within a sequencing campaign, typically you can only set up one ad group. And so within that ad group, you set up all your sequencing rules.
Yeah.
So you've already been through the creative planning process, and you're kind of producing all of your content to be able to map to that structure, if that makes sense. Right? And so like you want to hit users, if we're talking about direct to consumer, you're talking about an e-commerce company, you want to try and hit some of the pain points and solutions, might be a core concept to be able to, generate that initial interest. Like if it's something that is close to home for them, then maybe you hook that intro with that problem that really speaks to whatever the problem is that your product solves, so that your brand and set of products solve for them, and then get into whatever the solution is to that particular problem. It's usually a pretty good place to start within that sequence. And then if you continue bringing users down that sequence path, you can then hit them with testimonial videos that like really fires up the trustworthiness. You can have like a founder video, for example. Founder videos can do really well, which can take many different forms, but perhaps it's like a origin story or something like that. And I mean, nobody knows about the products better than the founder themselves, and could speak to really the problem solution aspects as well. So those types of things in sequence can be really powerful. And another way that you can add to that sequence is to kind of close the sale, having some kind of offer, some kind of discount, lower down kind of in the funnel. But really the idea is that you're trying to continuously engage the same user or groups of users along the way with new and unique videos, creatives, so that they can really engage with your brand and remember it.
So what you'd potentially be looking at is in a sequence, you're essentially running a whole, top to bottom funnel in one ad group. So potentially at the start, your first couple of videos, you're more focusing on, either emotional triggers, pain points, solutions. Then you're getting into your authority markers. Like every video would have some level of, if you're ready to make the next action, hey, you go and do it. But it's more, as at the start, it's less on the actual sales process, more on the pain points. Then you're moving more into the authority markers, and then you're probably moving more into like a direct sort of sales process right at the end of that sequence.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how you can approach it and test different iterations throughout that process. Once you start, and the thing is, it's like this is just as much of a data-driven process as any other type of Google Ads campaign. So once you always start with like a good hypothesis, what you think might work well, and you test, get some data feedback, and then start making intelligent tweaks along the way to try and make the best possible decisions.
And where does the role of, so this obviously, Google Ads has gone pretty big with demand gen. So when we're talking video, what decisions do you make, or what's your decision tree to make it like, these are going to be YouTube campaigns and these ones are going to be demand gen campaigns, which are focusing on YouTube?
That's a really great question. And so I'm a big proponent of demand gen campaigns. I really like them. If you're thinking about them through the lens of, do I run on YouTube or do I run on demand gen? I would probably, if you've never run on YouTube, start with demand gen, because it is, first of all, it covers kind of a greater level of placements, lets you generate more click data, lets you generate more conversion attribution and more kind of direct response type conversions that you might be used to from like a search or a shopping type ad, that gives you faster, better data feedback. And because they serve, so there's a lot of like YouTube heavy placements, it can give you initial data to be able to start engineering your YouTube campaigns, which, for example, you can create like CPM or CPV focused YouTube campaigns that lets you really, really build that upper funnel a much cheaper cost than most other ad types.
Yeah.
But demand gen, on its own serves ads at a very low CPC in my experience, and is a great place to start. It's like YouTube Lite kind of, and it just allows you to hit, like, I've seen CPAs and ROAS numbers for direct-to-consumer e-commerce as well as service-based businesses and healthcare that rival what I see on search.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about I'll give you a scenario.
So we've got a bit, like, let's just say it's an e-commerce brand. They're spending, say, $20,000 a month on Google Ads, but it's purely at the moment in, search shopping performance max. They wanted to start going into video. If you were managing that account, what would you be recommending around video in terms of percentage of their total spend, taking into account that they're getting good results with that 20K spend at the moment? Yeah. Okay. So would you be saying that they should add an extra 5 to 10% in video, or what's kind of the range there?
That's a really great question. So it depends on the situation, but I would probably think like a 5 to 10% ratio and think of it as a testing budget to generate data in the beginning, and certainly in the early days, is a great way to think about it. The more budget allocation that you have, probably the faster the learnings if you're doing it strategically. But 5 to 10%, and that's assuming that you're already profitable, allows you to reinvest. And then it allows you to reinvest into new placements, new type of media, and generates those initial days of learnings that allows you a data set that you can pull from to be able to make much better decisions and potentially scale into. So I think that would be a good way to go. And one of the most important things I would say that one should do before diving right in is ensuring that you have great quality content and very intentionally produced. Yeah. And one of the best ways to do that is to work with like a great creative agency, or a great, if you already have an internal creative team that really knows your brand and business well, that's a great way to go. But there's plenty of creative agencies today that really connect themselves with your brand and your products and your services, and know both the production side, which can be really complicated, as well as like the paid media and the data side as well, so that they're producing content that's great for YouTube or whatever engine that you're trying to advertise with that.
So let's talk about creative quality. So, let's talk about a smaller brand. Do you see that you need an external agency in there? What are kind of the levels? Like, can you do a YouTube campaign if you've only got like a GoPro or an iPhone, or you do think that you do need some high levels of quality there?
Yeah, I guess, you can really generate some pretty high quality even with your iPhone or with a GoPro. And it can really come down to being intentional about what you're doing and just closely mapping whatever content you're trying to produce to the type of people that you're reaching, and using it as a connection point between the people you're trying to reach and your brand, product, services, etc. Like, that's kind of the key to the success, I believe. But like, the quality is really like how intentional you are and how thoughtful and methodical you are about the production and creation of that content. So it's hard to say that like, your content should just be X perfect quality at all times. Like, that's not necessarily true if that's not the type of audience you're trying to present to, if that's not like a great representation of your brand, or if it's not reflective of what makes for a brand or a product that's really resonating to that audience, or transparent. You also don't want it to seem fake.
No. And I guess the thing I always come back to when talking to brands about getting into YouTube is that your authenticity, in terms of the higher that is, the more you get away with in terms of the actual overall quality.
Well said. Yeah, totally.
And that's where I go, like, there are some minimum bench points. Like, I go, I'm just like, even investing in like a little lapel mic. I've literally got no association with this company, but making sure your audio is set. If you can just get your audio to a level where it's not annoying for people to try to listen to it. And my big thing is for businesses, if you're just like wanting to dip your toe into video ads, something around, like, we've had an e-commerce brand, their best performing video ad, it was like it wasn't this product, but they literally just did a voiceover and talking about it. And
Nice.
absolutely killed. There wasn't even any faces involved in it. It was literally just a pair of hands talking over. But that worked really well in the Shorts network. It didn't work anywhere else. So that's where
Gotcha.
you got to come back to. Is you got to come back to, I think, really think about the content of where it's going to be seen, how it's going to happen, and who you're talking to. So I think if you can keep it as authentic as possible, that's a great way of getting started with it.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally agree with everything.
All right. So let's now really get into, we've gone around, I guess, sort of the process and things like that. So I think a lot of businesses, what they really, really want to get to know is how on earth can I measure the impact of this? Because a lot of the times, I know the biggest resistance we've had to take our clients and business that we work with on a journey is don't look at the YouTube or the demand gen campaign line by itself, because it won't report a profit, or it may not report a profit. So how do you, I guess, probably educate people through to look at the account stats as a whole, as opposed to just to individual campaign lines?
Totally. Yeah. This is like, I think one of the trickiest things, and tends to be one of the biggest things that it prevents people from really getting into it and maybe stopping advertising often. And I've experienced it a lot. And, I think it's just really critical. Like, obviously, all of the metrics that I already mentioned that you're measuring in platform are great. There's a few other ways that you can, or a few other things in platform, like within Google Ads, that you're able to use as measurements. If you're spending over a certain amount, you're able to engage in lift measurement or Google brand lift studies.
Yes.
And like the thing about all of these suggestions that I'll probably make here is that they're all signals. They're all helpful directionally. They're all pieces of information that you can use together to paint kind of a more complete picture. But attribution with YouTube is tricky right now and for the foreseeable future, like, to say the least. Google brand lift studies, great way to go. And outside of Google, you can look at your Google Analytics results and generate some kind of behavioral reporting and some light attribution, because you are going to get some click data, and you're going to be able to report on some things, like some traffic that actually comes in to your website as well. And so that's going to be helpful to help kind of paint that picture. Another way that seems really simple but can be really, really effective is just using post-purchase surveys. So after somebody actually completes a purchase, if you're on e-commerce store, for example, you can ask them how they heard about you in just like a very simple format. And you list all of your different channels that you're using within your media mix. YouTube is one of them. Then add it to it. And, you can always do kind of like a before and after type measurement that helps at least directionally. If you're doing a lot of sales volume, and you start seeing YouTube come up more and more as a proportion of those post-purchase surveys, then it's another indicator. And it can be really helpful. And then you're going to want to watch like your brand, branded search. If you're really having an impact in YouTube and your ads are resonating, it's very likely people are more often searching for your brand now and your products as well. And so those are all things that if you're a search marketer, if you're used to search, you're going to be able to measure in all of the typical tools you would, whether it's Google Search Console, it's within Google Ads Keyword Planner, those types of things. And the thing about YouTube, if it's really effective, it's like kind of helping all of your channels rise, right? Because it's really generating that awareness across everything. So often you see impacts across several different platforms, and it's being able to correlate the timing of those impacts and measuring over time to really start to notice those changes. And one of the biggest impacts that you tend to see if you're doing really well on YouTube is because you're filling that higher funnel and at a relatively less expensive cost per view than you would from like a cost per click from like a search campaign, you're able to just generate so much volume of views and people that are then engaging with your brand at a relatively lower cost, that those people, X percentage of them come down funnel and end up purchasing. It's going to reduce your cost per acquisition over time as well.
I think it's a really, really interesting time especially for search marketers, because for so long we were really dialed into like this exact keyword, and this is the exact result. But with what's happening, I think one of the core metrics that I've seen coming out that I don't think it's got a lot of attention yet is everyone's sort of going, oh, well, Google search is increasing. Google search is increasing in terms of the numbers. But I think it was WordStream released data that up to 44% less clicks in some industries.
Right.
So it's really going into, the volume of search is increasing, but with AO overviews and AO mode, which is going to get more and more, they're already starting to see a large reduction in clicks. Mm-hmm. For me, what this is going to mean is and I'm really thankful for the experience that I had working with some larger media agencies and actually just doing the Google. And you would see that you'd go, these would be campaigns that'd be having $1 million in ad spend, and paid ads would get 10% of it.
Right.
But they would absolutely kill. But we would see it. We go like in Australia, we have billboard, like the back of the buses. You go, when they've got the back of the bus ads come on, you see the peak. It's that whole thing of you can't quantify what's happening on the back of the bus, but it goes around. I mean, that's one of the things. I don't know if it's around what the brand is. There's a big brand. I've got 3 daughters, so they love this brand, White Fox. Every single bus that goes past is White Fox. But it's generated for like Gen Z, like a younger crowd, and that's the biggest part of their spend. And it just comes down to, I think, sometimes I think for the search marketers that are going to be successful in the future are going to be ones that are going to start to really look at and be able to not only see how YouTube works, but articulate it to the client. And I think that's going to be the big challenge of really articulating the benefits through, because you can't just go, hey, look, you spent $10,000 and you got $30,000 back. You don't sometimes get that end game with YouTube.
Man, that's a really good point. And I think it's such an interesting way to think about it, and really hits home with, because you're in like a low attribution environment relative to like a click-based environment, it is almost similar to something like a billboard or an ad on the back of the bus. That is where correlation studies and incrementality studies are really, able to try to help you like bridge that gap there, where it's like the cause and effect is so unclear. The path between when somebody sees your ad to, purchasing or taking some kind of other action is often very, very unclear. And so, but like you noted, like seeing that line of, well, we, ran some ads and, well, here's our sales over here. Yeah. And although it doesn't look like it's necessarily completely connected, you can correlate closely enough that it would be.
Yeah, and I think it's really coming through for successful search marketers. For me, we'll have to drop some of the mantras that we've been saying, and we would always kind of sneer at you're tracking impressions or you're tracking clicks, like it's all about conversions. I'm not saying that conversions are not important. I think the real movement is for anyone who wants to be successful with Google Ads moving forward is because we're talking with clients all the time. Like we ask for so much data about their business that at some point they generally go, I don't feel comfortable sharing that. And I think if you're not asking for that much data, you're probably looking in the wrong areas. And that's what we're communicating. We're going, look, because what we need to know is we don't see the ROAS metrics in Google Ads. Yes, we use it for optimizations, but if you're reporting a 500%, it's like, I don't think that you're making 500%. I want to know what the real numbers are. We've got to see the metrics run through. And that's where I think success will be. You can't be so blinded about that. The actual revenue reporting needs to be accurate, but it's just so you can find the trend line so that well, when we increase this lever, it happens this in the business's profit and loss statement.
Totally. Yeah. I always look at in-platform metrics and reporting as directional. So like just to your exact point. Yeah, like unless you're looking at your client's P&L statements, you're not seeing what's actually happening within their business. So and that is exactly right. It's directionally relevant, and it shouldn't be taken as exact.
Yeah, and definitely you use it to, if you want to, like you can use it to put the brakes on if you want to set a target ROAS, or you can to lower the target. So it's used for optimization. So that's why you need to know directionally it's important, but it's not the exact correlation of what's happening.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, Craig, I'm sure we could keep talking for longer, but hey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. For anyone watching this video or listening, if you go down to the show notes or the description, there's going to be a link of where you can get in contact with Craig. And thanks for coming on, Craig. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Aaron, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me. Take care, man.
No worries.
Cheers.